Hello, my name is David. My call sign is KQ4HJW, Kilo, Quebec 4, Hotel Juliet Whiskey. My QTH is in Alabama. I am with the Calhoun County Amateur Radio Association. Our club call sign is WB4GNA. Our club has started doing presentations on different aspects of amateur radio. Things like WinLink, PODA, Gray Line. There'll be several different videos that we're going to upload as we have people to come and do the presentations. The presentations will be available to the public. They'll be available to go back and review, or maybe you just want to go back and watch them again. One thing about amateur radio is there's no shortage of things to learn, especially with the new digital stuff that has come out lately. Amateur radio is just constantly expanding, and we have a lot of talented people in our club, and we're going to try to learn a little bit of what they have to teach. Our first presentation is going to be by, sorry I had to go get my glasses, I can't see without them. Our first presentation is going to be by Keith Mitchell, W9LN. Keith is going to give us a presentation on Gray Line.
Everybody got too excited.
Alright, we're going to go ahead and get started. This isn't going to take me very long because there's not a whole lot to this. But this is a technique that you can use on low bands to make contacts with parts of the world that otherwise you wouldn't be able to contact on a lower band. I chase DX, that's pretty much all I do. I'm trying to chase after countries on everything that I'm on. I'm 10 countries away now from being on the DXCC honor roll. So I'm trying to get them on every single band, on every single note, all 340 countries. I'm at 321 right now. On the table, I've done presentations before and talked about DX, and people are interested in QSL cards. You know, you do a lot of confirmations online, but you actually can get QSL cards. I brought some with me today. I brought some like this one here. This one's from Vietnam. This is the envelope it came in if you want to see what Vietnamese stamps look like. So there's some up here with the envelopes that came in. There's some other cards up here. Just if you want to stop by and look at them. This is from Antarctica, for instance. This is a Russian scientific station in Antarctica. And so there's just a lot of those up here. I just grabbed a few if anybody wants to look at them. Gray line propagation is what we're going to talk about. And I've watched some YouTube videos just out of curiosity because I do this every single day just to see what they said about it. There's nobody on there who got it exactly right. So we're going to go through some of that. This is a ham clock screen. The gray line will show on your ham clock screen. There's also some websites that will show you this too. The gray line is this area right here. Where the sun is coming up or where the sun is going down. This is basically going to apply to 40 meters, 60 meters, 80 meters, and 160 meters. And when you're on those bands, it needs to be at least this area here, and you're going to be trying to make contacts back into the darkness. And those bands only work for DX after dark. They don't work during the daytime because of the presence of the D layer in the ionosphere. Those lower bands, when you transmit, your signal will be absorbed totally by the D layer, for instance on 80 meters. So you can't get any real distance out of it. If it's sunrise, you're going to be looking to make contacts to the west. So for instance, when I got Israel on 160 meters, it was right about the time the sun was going down when it was dark there. And when you get, if you get up like I do this time of year, I get up, I'm usually up by about 4 o'clock in the morning and on the radio, because as the sun gets ready to come up, I can get the South Pacific, Southeast Asia. So the gray line is how you're able to do that. That line is also, this line is also known as the terminator, that division between daylight and dark. Gray line propagation only occurs at sunrise and sunset. And it doesn't occur for very long. And it's not limited to the terminator, which means you're not only going to be making contacts from where the sun's coming up to where the sun's going down. It doesn't just apply to those areas. It works on 7 megahertz and below. That's 40 meters, 60 meters, 80 meters, and 160 meters. That's because after dark, there's no D-layer absorption on those bands, and your signal can get up to the F layer and be reflected and come back down. 14 megahertz and above is not gray line. 20 meters, 17 meters, 15 meters, 12 meters, 10 meters, that is not gray line. There is something that happens on those bands, but it is not gray line. What happens on those bands is called skip scatter. After dark, there's an F1 layer and an F2 layer right now while the sun is up. After dark, the F1 layer and F2 layer come back together. When the sun comes up, those layers separate again. When those layers are coming together and when they're separating, the skip zones shift. So a station that you weren't able to hear before, you all of a sudden can hear because the skip pattern changed enough that you're able to hear them. The difference that you notice between gray line and skip scatter is this. Let's say the sun goes down and you're starting to be able to hear a station. You'll probably hear that station for another hour or two before the band shifts again. Gray line, you're only going to hear them for maybe 30 minutes to an hour at the most. About 30 minutes before the sun comes up to about 30 minutes after about 30 minutes before the sun comes up to pretty much once the sun is up, they'll be gone, and you won't hear them anymore. They'll just come up out of the noise, you'll hear them, and then they'll go away. 10 megahertz, that's the band I haven't mentioned yet, 30 meters. 30 meters sometimes is affected by gray line, sometimes it's not. There's a D-layer absorption indicator in ham clock, and it's called DRAP. If you look at that one, it will let you know what frequency that cutoff line is, where the D-layer is absorbing signals. As long as that D-layer absorption is below 10 megahertz, which it usually is, 30 meters isn't affected. Sometimes you'll notice it gets to be up around 11 megahertz. If that's the case, I'll check 30 meters to see if anything's happening over there that I wasn't able to hear before. This is the ionosphere. This is a basic picture of what happens with the ionosphere. The D layer is closest to us. Have you ever heard anybody talk about sporadic propagation on 6 meters? That happens with this layer right here. This is the F1 and F2 layers that you get the most distance out of when you skip off of those layers. But as the sun goes down, the D layer is the first one to go away. Then the E layer dissipates, then the F1 and F2 come together. And then when the sun comes up, they separate out, and then these other layers come back. And the best way to use it is to either use a digital mode or use CW. Sideband is so inefficient. You just about going to have to run the maximum amount of power, and you're going to just about have to have a beam. And I've seen 80-meter beams before. They're huge. But CW and digital modes are so efficient that you're able to make these real long-distance contacts to other parts of the world. This card right here, this confirms an 80-meter digital contact with Vietnam that happened at about 5:16 in the morning as the sun was coming up. And it's real interesting to watch it because you're either listening to a frequency that you know someone is on CW, or you're listening on or you're watching your screen on a frequency where you know they're on like FT8. You can see people calling them, but you can't see them. And then a few minutes before the sun comes up, they just start appearing on your screen, or you start hearing them on CW. The signal will get stronger for just a few minutes, and then just as they appeared, they'll just disappear, and then they're gone. You've got just a few minutes to try to work them. I worked in Japan on 160 meters. One morning, I was on FT8 that morning on 160 and just had it on while I was in the shack. All of a sudden, 12 stations from Japan appeared on the screen at one time. I double-clicked on a couple of them to try to get a contact. I got a contact with one of them, and just as quickly as they appeared, about 30 minutes later, they were all gone. And that's how gray line will work. They're just there for a few minutes and then they're gone. But it lets you make those real far distant contacts on those lower bands. And if you want a lot more information on it, because this is just scratching the surface of all of it. This is a book called Low Band DXing. This is the 4th edition. Yeah. There's a 5th edition of this. The man who wrote it is ON4UN, and he has passed away. So the 5th edition is the most recent one. You can get this from the ARRL, but I got this one off of eBay for like $18. If you get the 4th edition, I don't have it in here, but there's a CD-ROM that comes with it that shows you a lot of stuff about 80-meter antennas, 160-meter antennas. It gives you some information on how to construct those. Also gives you information on how to use listening antennas. On those bands, beverage antennas are used, K9AY listening array antennas are used. A lot of people use listening antennas on those lower bands because 9 times out of 10, you can be heard a lot better than you can hear on those low bands. And being able to hear is the big thing on those. If you want to know more about just general HF propagation, this book is very good. Little Pistol's Guide to HF Propagation. He not only talks about propagation and what time of day to use what kind of bands, he's also going to go into a lot of detail about the different things and indicators we have for solar weather. Sunspot numbers, solar flux, all that, you know, K indexes, A indexes, and all that. He goes into all that detail in that book. That book's about 130, I think it's 135 pages long. It's about a 30-year-old book. You can download it from there for free. If you put Little Pistol's Guide to HF Propagation and you put his call sign in Google, this is usually the first, every time I've tried it, that's the first hit that comes up. It's k9la.us is the website. And then you just download it from there. And like I said, he gives you a lot of information just on general HF propagation and how all that works. He mentions gray line a couple of places, but that's basically what that one's about. But that's basically gray line and how it works. Anybody got any questions?
It seems like it'd be a good thing to know because a lot of times I'll work people and I can't, it doesn't make sense going by the east-west propagation. And then one time I was working at ZS, South Africa, and it was at the bottom of the sunspot cycle. So how was that possible? But I figured north-south is probably one of the other ones you mentioned.
Yeah, there's some.
Like 10 meters.
That 10 meters is affected by a lot of the same propagation things that 6 meters is. So you will have something called transequatorial propagation. And
Yeah.
you can even have sporadic E on 10 meters as well. That's a high enough frequency band that you can even get into that. And there's oblique there's oblique transequatorial propagation on those bands. That's how you get into like Australia and New Zealand.
A lot of stuff to know.
Yeah, 6 meters has got a whole lot of stuff that goes on with it. That's about the only band it happens on.
Kind of a dumb question, but what kind of equipment do you use? I know it's got to be some kind of receiver, I guess.
I've got an ICOM 7610 and an 80 meter in-fed half wave, and I run 100 watts. So I sit there a long time sometimes, yeah.
For, do you use the 7610's feature that shows that, don't they have on-screen decoding for digital?
They have an on-screen decoding for RTTY and PSK31.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, it'll do. You can send RTTY through it. You can decode on the screen and key RTTY from your keyboard. You can plug a keyboard. You can also send CW from a keyboard too. And PSK31.
How high is your dipole?
The center of it's about 40 feet off the ground.
Wow. And you've got a lot of countries on 80? It's hard for me.
I've got about 150 countries on 80 meters.
Wow. And I even live on top of a hill.
Yeah.
I'm doing something wrong.
160 is the hard one. I've only got 40 on 160.
That's impressive to me.
But yeah, all the other bands from 40 on, I've got 100 and about 130 on 60 meters. And then all the bands higher than that, the lowest one I have is 40 meters, and I've got 225 on 40 meters. And I've got right at 300 on 20 meters. But yeah, this is how you get those, this is how you get them on 40 meters and 80 meters and all those others. You just, and this time of the year is better for that because it's darker for longer.
What about at the bottom of the sunspot cycle?
That's actually better for 160 and 80. That actually helps those bands because those bands don't do really, on days where 10 meters is wide open all over the world all day long and even into the night, you're not going to hear anything basically but static on 160. You're not going to just about not going to hear anybody. It does better when the sunspot cycle is low and there are coronal holes and things. So, all right. No more questions? Then that's it. Told you that wouldn't take long. If you want to send this QSL conference,
I'm just going to let everybody know everything is.
Okay.
But the USS Midway is on air today. If you want to contact me.
Thanks. Okay. These cards are up here if anybody wants you to come.
Everybody, thank you, Keith, for coming out and doing it for us today.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that.